on the 5-minute phone call in July 5th, I don't see how you say that during that phone call, the victim told the defendant that they were getting engaged. We don't know anything about what happened in that phone call, do we?
Yes, sir, we do know exactly what happened during that phone call.
Okay, how do we know that?
Part of that evidence was admissible and part of that evidence was not. We know exactly what happened during that phone call because Mike told his brother, Tim. And Mike told his brother, Tim, I'm going to get married to Karen, and I'm afraid of what that news will do when I tell Dana, because I'm afraid of what she will do to me. Because of the obvious hearsay exceptions, and not all of that falling into it, all of that evidence was not presented to the jury. But I stand before you knowing that that phone call took place.
How do you get to say stuff that's not in evidence, though?
I didn't say all of that. Rather,
what you said was they talked for 5 minutes and Mike told Dana that he was getting married.
Yes, sir.
Does any of that relate to how does that relate to the July 5th phone call?
That's the phone call I'm talking about, Your Honor. In addition,
that's not about her showing up in the breezeway and him reacting to her saying, I want to move back in. I'm confused.
Yes.
I want to know exactly what the testimony of the brother was. What was the testimony of the brother? Did he say, Mike told me that during the phone call he told Dana that he was getting married?
No, yes. Mike,
during the phone call, not at some point during the phone call.
Yes, Your Honor.
And that's in evidence. That's just not in your brain.
I hope it's not just in my brain. That's
the reason I'm asking that is not to be disrespectful in any way.
Yes.
But a few moments ago, your answer in response to my colleague's question was, I knew it, therefore I could talk about it. And that's not an answer.
Yes, I understand.
The answer has to be, it's in evidence. You understand that, of course.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay.
And I hope I'm not confusing the two. Let's say that I am, worst case scenario, and we look only at Tim Sisko's testimony. Let's look at it that way. Tim Sisko testified that Mike had told the defendant he was getting married to Karen.
When?
And I want to limit myself to make sure that I'm not confusing. If I limit myself only to that, then Justice Beyer is correct. That's
the breezeway conversation.
Yes, sir.
Okay. We're trying to get you into that phone call.
I can point the court to Shirley Regal and Mark Malik's testimony. I do not believe that they are exclusively to that 5-minute phone call. I guess I'm supplementing the prior answer by saying that both of them testified that the defendant knew Mike was getting married to Karen. That does not specifically say the 5-minute phone call.
That's the problem. That's the problem you're faced with, because that's the first inference that your opposing counsel is attempting to rely upon for her inference stacking argument.
If another phone call had been made a full year earlier, that would be a substantially different case for you to argue, would it not?
Yes, sir. And
so I guess to cut through this, what led you to think that it was that 5-minute phone call in which the defendant learned of this impending marriage, as opposed to something else?
Because that's what we were told from the beginning in the investigation and the preparation in this case, Your Honor.
But that's not evidence.
And that's why this inference on inference matters.
Okay.
And the first inference is what happened in that phone call. So I'm asking you today, what's your evidence on what happened in the phone call?
The phone call and the timing of the murders immediately after that.
That's not about the content of it. That's just reasoning backward from what happened later. Yes. The content of the phone call, do you have any direct evidence or any kind of evidence that's stronger than what you've already talked about on what happened during the 5-minute phone call?
Not that I can promise you is in the record rather than just in my mind.